Brand new gameplay footage for Jurassic World Evolution 3 just dropped with so many things to get excited about, but also some signs of disappointment. In this video, I will take you through the new footage, talking about all the details. The 2-minute clip starts with a shot of this facility area within a park, and what I really love about this is the facades built around it so that it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb within your park. You can see these beautiful Japanese structures, but it's just a front to hide the facility buildings behind it. The ATV drives out into the park in response to a broken fence, and this is likely a fully automated response, as we know, again from previous information, that we can place supply posts throughout our park, and then if something breaks within the radius of that supply post, or if something breaks within the range of a security camera, a team will automatically be dispatched to deal with that. If you want to stay up to date on all of the news, subscribe to the channel and I'll make sure you won't miss out on anything. Look at all of these lovely Japanese decorations, and of course because it's modular building, we can fully customize all of these things. For example, this little fence that we see around this plaza, it could be just a standard placeable fence, but I'm guessing it's something that they just built piece by piece. And that's something that we'll be able to do as well. We can make any type of fence that we want, for our guests and for our dinosaurs. There's an icon in the bottom far right that makes me wonder what it might mean. I think it could be the complexity meter counting down. So this clip is from a small park that has only used up 10% of the piece count, so 90% left to go, which is why it's blue, there's no concern there. And then the other clip is from a much bigger park that is already halfway through the piece count, and thus it's orange, letting you know that you're making your way through. This gameplay footage is using mouse and keyboard controls, but that doesn't mean it's captured on PC. This could be the console version of the game, which would explain why the possible complexity meter. In case you don't know, a complexity meter keeps track of just how many scenery items you've placed in your park with modular building, because the more items, the more straining your park is on your system. The complexity is limited to preserve performance on console versions of Planet Zoo and Planet Coaster 2, which will also be implemented for Jurassic World Evolution 3. The next segment of the new gameplay footage is a bit of a speed build of a habitat, and there's a lot here that is really going to help make our habitats and our parks overall just so exciting, but also quite easy to make. So they're starting with digging down, and as you can see, the terrain on the cliff faces is automatically painted with a suitable, appropriate rocky texture. Speaking of rocks though, you will notice, or you might at least, that there are no rocks automatically generating on the cliffs, which we have seen in the trailer. Now we see a little bit later when they're digging down over here that the rocks do automatically appear. So I'm not really sure what the mechanic behind that is and how we can play with that. But regardless of how that works, if it's just rocks that you're randomly unearthing in the terrain, or if it's a setting that you can enable and disable, you don't have to worry that you have to place rocks one by one if they don't automatically appear. But we're gonna get to that in a little bit. First, we get a glimpse of them using the water tool. And of course, we have two water tools in Jurassic World Evolution 3. We have shallow water and we have deep water. What is a pleasant surprise for me in this footage is that deep water can be placed inside of the shallow water. I thought there would always be like a barrier between the two of them, but by being able to combine them, you can create a much more natural body of water, where it's shallower around the edges, and then it goes down into the deeper water that allows some of our dinosaurs to swim. Of course, we already know not all dinosaurs will be able to swim, which means that we'll be able to use that deep water as a barrier as well for our dinosaur habitats. Now, the water tool is limited to 2 depths. Even though we have some options here, radius, intensity, slope, contour lines, there's no option here for depth. So it's either shallow or deep. But as they continue, it is just really lovely to see these terrain tools in action. This was my most wanted feature for Jurassic World Evolution 3, because I think epic environments are so important to a dinosaur parks, because dinosaurs are epic, so they deserve a fitting backdrop. And I think this is just brilliant. This makes me really, really giddy. And as someone who really loves rocks, if you've seen my recent builds, you know exactly what I mean. It's an absolute lifesaver that we're going to have a dedicated rock brush. I'd speculated before that we'd get a rock brush because, you know, I'd seen these tiles in the trailers and I thought, that looks like a dedicated rock brush, but it's nice to see it in action here. And it's just gonna save a whole bunch of time to make our cliffs look a whole lot better, because what I've realized now that I play Jurassic World Evolution 2 modded is that just the terrain textures, like the rocky paint texture, doesn't cut it for me anymore. I really need those rocky outcroppings, and this brush is going to make really quick work of that. Now, this super jagged look of all of these rocks just slapped onto the side of the cliff here is a little messy. It's not necessarily what I'm gonna want to do every single time, but we see more of the rocks in a little bit that you can use to create, you know, more smooth cliff faces in a really easy way. In the next step, you see them using the foliage brushes. As with Jurassic World Evolution 2, we have the paleobotany foliage brushes, so that system is going to return as food for your herbivores. Something of note here, I guess, is that the brushes aren't stackable. They do replace the type of foliage that you put down, which on one hand makes sense. On the other hand, it would be nice if you'd be able to stack some paleobotany types on top of one another. I was really hoping that we would have all foliage types available on all maps. So for example, we're on a Japanese map right now, but that we'd have a foliage brush for cacti and we'd have a foliage brush for palm trees, you know, from all of the different biomes on one map. So we can make little sub-biomes on a map. Unfortunately, that doesn't appear to be the case. In this footage, we can see them scroll down to the bottom of the foliage tab, and really all we have are the paleobotany trees. We have cover and pasture, which are biome appropriate foliage types. We have arid and barren, and we have wetlands, and both of those, you know, have a limited option. So unfortunately, it appears that we don't have all foliage types on all maps, and that answers one of the questions from my previous Jurassic World Evolution 3 video, although it's not the answer that I wanted. I will note that this is still the pre-alpha version of the game, so maybe it's something that gets added down the line, but I wouldn't hold out hope for that. I think we are limited to biome appropriate foliage types, which also, by extension, almost definitely means that we will be limited to biome-appropriate terrain paints. Note how when they put down this next bit of water lilies automatically appear. And that fits with, you know, the rocks automatically appearing. And we've seen some foliage automatically appear on the edge of the water when they place water. They've talked about this. They really... You know, they've given the modular building for the people who want to go all in with, like, the creative details, but they're also giving us tools to make building beautiful parks really, really effortless. And this is an example of that. They're just placing a bit of water, and without any input from us, a nice patch of water lilies already appears. They also show the waterfall feature in action, and this is one of my favorite features that Frontier is like surprise dropping in this new version of the game. You know, there's a lot of stuff that we've been asking for and that we were more or less like, okay, this is basically a need, but this is like a little treat on top. And I will say, the waterfalls that we're looking at right now, they look the best we've seen so far. So I do think that we're seeing development happening. Because for me, it really looks like the waterfalls have already improved from how we saw them in the trailer and in some other footage. They look really spectacular here. All right, here we go. Paths. Some people might remember that my channel started out under the name Crazy Path Lady because I did crazy path art in Jurassic World Evolution 1. And seeing all of these options, past Evo could have only dreamed of this. Now, obviously, we are seeing a lot of repetition here, and that's because each path type looks to become available in 3 widths. So we have small, medium, and thick, which is, you know, the same as what we've had before. But we have a lot more different types, again, including natural types. And as you can see, there is a scroll bar there, so there's even more path types that we are not currently seeing. All of that excitement aside, I do have to make note of the disappointing news that lies within seeing this path tool. And that is that they didn't change the path tool to that of Planet Coaster 2, Planet Zoo. You know, the path tool that allows you to really easily make elevated walkways and bridges across water. That's not the case here. You know, we don't see the width option. The path system, in essence, is still what it was in Jurassic World Evolution 2 and even Jurassic World Evolution 1, where it just lays flat on top of the ground. Now, an overhaul of the path system wasn't 100% necessary under the condition that they included a workaround for creating elevated pathways and bridges with a modular building, like what is possible in Prehistoric Kingdom. Obviously, modular building allows you to build anything you want, so you can build bridges and elevated walkways. The question is whether there is a way to build those to be functional for guests. I really hope that will be the case. This game is looking so good, and it would really be a missed opportunity if guest bridges are still nothing more than an illusion. Okay, so speaking of modular building, here we have a look at the rock tab within the, you know, the whole scenery menu for modular building. So, you know, we have like 24 tabs with different categories with scenery items that we can use to create anything we want. And yeah, we're having a look at the absolutely massive rock selection here. And this is what I mentioned earlier, right? So with the rock brush, you can like place down all of these hundreds of rocks on your cliff faces, and they have that really messy, jagged look to it, which can be fine if that's what you want. But if you want a more smooth and I'd say more realistic looking rocky cliff face, then you can easily use these pieces. So what they're placing down right here are just big chunks of rocks, and they're using it to complete the habitat. Our dinosaurs will not be able to scale these rocks, and our dinosaurs will not be able to scale this steep terrain. So this is a natural border that is going to provide, you know, the barrier to our dinosaur habitats. But this is also the way where we can, you know, we can use these rocks to spruce up our cliff faces. So here we have an overview of the habitat that they built, and you see what I mean, right? So you see all of those like hundreds of jagged looking rocks on the cliff faces, and they've left some part of the cliff faces bare, but what's also an option is to use those big pre-made rocks to give texture to your cliff faces instead. I also think what really shines in this shot is just how updated the game looks. Like the water looks absolutely glorious. It looks so beautiful. And the next shot as well is like just the lagoons alone the water looks so much better. It is absolutely blowing my mind just how good it looks. The rest of the gameplay footage is footage from inside the lagoon. We see our Mosasaurus swimming around doing some social behaviors. But most importantly, I think what we're seeing here is just what a huge difference it makes to be able to sink these rocks and plant types down into the lagoon and just fill out our lagoons more. Something that I am still hoping for is that the terrain tools will work in the lagoon, so we can actually just very easily make shallow lagoons, as opposed to, you know, filling the bottom with rocks to create the illusion that it is shallow. And something that I didn't even think to ask, but someone else brought this up in the comments, I also hope that we're gonna have underwater foliage brushes. If you want to stay up to date on Jurassic World Evolution 3 and not miss out on any of the news, subscribe to the channel. We've gained like 20,000 new subscribers in the past month. It's absolutely insane. But thank you guys so much for joining the channel. I'm so happy to be sharing all of the news and the excitement with you guys. And I'm looking forward to the rest of this period where we learn more and more about the game. Thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and until next time, stay tuned for more.